The more you learn about the Imperium of Man, the more you realize that any little thing that you do can get you in trouble. No matter how insignificant it may seem, if anyone with some form of authority takes what you did the wrong way, it could land you in prison. And the reason for this is wrapped up in that dog-eat-dog mentality of most of the cultures of the Imperium of Man. From the highborns that are constantly watching their back, to the manufactorum workers that must compete with each other to achieve output quotas. And as interesting as this social phenomenon is, it deserves a video all on its own, because in this video, we have to talk about what happens when an Imperial citizen gets labeled as a criminal. The massive volume of crimes that are supposedly being committed creates a criminal population that is enormous. Obviously, most of these individuals are not as bloodthirsty and deranged as the criminals that we're used to hearing about in the lore. Many of them are family members of individuals that somehow threaten the rule of a nobleborn. But the answer to such a massive population of quote-unquote criminals is to separate them from the rest of the population, most notably on planets that function as military prisons. These planets are recognized as penal worlds by the Imperium of Man, and every sector and sometimes even subsectors have a couple of these prison planets. And with that said, I want to welcome you guys back to another 40 Facts about the 40K universe. I am your host, Gersh1, and today we're going to be talking about penal worlds. If you guys are new to the channel, we post Warhammer 40K lore videos every single day. What I try to do is I create a video with a lore portion, a hobby portion, and then a Q&A at the end of the video. So if you guys have any comments that you guys would like me to react to, or any questions that you guys would like me to answer in tomorrow's video, just ask down in the comment section below. If you guys enjoy this type of content, hit the like button, share with your friends, support us on Patreon, do all that cool stuff. Really appreciate it. But with all that said, let's get into 40 facts on penal worlds. Penal worlds tend to be barren, barely habitable planets that have few other uses and have little, if any, indigenous populations. The structure of these worlds vary from planet to planet. Some actually have organized prisons scattered throughout the world, and each is heavily guarded by arbitrators, while others are simply drop-off points where the prisoners are dumped onto the surface of a feral world and then left to their own survival. Most sectors have both types of these worlds, where the structured penal worlds are for the petty thieves, the conmen, the looters, the political agitators and their families, and the feral penal worlds are reserved for the murderers, rapists, and truly violent criminals. But the true organization of these purgatory planets is completely left to the sector council. Let's first take a look at the structured penal worlds. For the unlucky prisoners that land on these planets, the criminals labor and toil at various menial tasks while serving out their sentences, and although they have the potential to parole out, only a few actually do. Life on these penal colonies is extremely regimented and heavily monitored. Daily menial labor maintaining the grounds, or mining and extracting resources, is designed to tax even the hardiest individual's energy level, thereby reducing the incident of violent encounters. Food is largely bland and heavily processed to inhibit muscle growth and dull the senses. Constant lockdowns when not working or eating all but eliminates the ability to hope for a better day. These calculated practices break the will of the inmates. On these worlds, the planetary governor is also a global prison warden, and his authority is absolute. The warden and his guards often brutalize the inmate population, adding to their considerable misery and mortality. The populace tends to be hardened, ruthless, shifty, and untrustworthy because of all of this. The biggest benefit of these types of penal planets is the massive source of potential soldiers. Military formations are often raised from amongst the prison populations and serve as penal legion troops within the Imperial Guard. To learn more about penal legions, check out our 40 facts on penal legions. I'll put a link up above. When the demand of expendable soldiers is the highest, Lord Generals send word back along the worlds that they have conquered and request additional troops from all of the planets capable of sending them. Penal colonies are often able to send viable troops who seek little more than the final taste of freedom and redemption in the service of the God Emperor. While it seems like having an Imperial Guard regiment made up of criminals is a bad idea, as they would be difficult to control, the truth is that life on a penal world develops survival strategies to inure themselves to the horrors around them, making them surprisingly tough soldiers. Back on their prison planets, many criminals band together in gangs to provide support, protection, and strength. Some have to rely on intimidation or reputation to keep potential threats at bay. Those unable to cope either find their way into their graves or end up more deeply imprisoned by their fellow inmates. The few able to survive and emerge from this environment stronger and more defined are the ones that have the potential to be great soldiers. Now we can move on to the penal colonies that are so far removed from the rest of the Imperium that they are merely dumping grounds for what the sector or subsector government considers human trash. On these worlds, transport fleets often arrive in system festooned with one-way drop pods filled with convicts. Once in orbit, they fire off the pods and then depart for a hasty transition back into the warp, leaving the accused to fend for themselves. On some of these worlds, a single established bastion provides updates or provides a basis for the Imperial Guard to arrive and collect its tithes. In others, those who survive form their own tribal groupings and struggle to exist with what remains of the pods and any gear that they were given. The best example of this type of penal colony is the planet of Xi'an. The planet of Xi'an was located in the Orpheus salient of the Jericho Reach in the Jericho sector. During the Great Crusade, the planet became a penal world, where heretics, criminals, and cowards were dumped on the planet's surface. The Imperium allowed survival of the fittest to run its course here. Little was done to monitor the system, as the hazardous environment was deemed sufficient punishment and an effective prison. Xi'an's atmosphere is tinged yellow by the sulfurous fumes that constantly bubble from the hot springs scattered across its surface. These dense fumes leave the planet's surface a dim place, as thick acidic clouds diffuse the light. While breathable, the atmosphere leaves a foul taste in the mouth of those who visit, and lasting scar tissue in the lungs of those who stay. The planet's highly active core causes frequent tectonic instability, which is likely tied to the constant eruptions from the assorted geysers and the steady emission of gases through the hot swamplands. Surprisingly, the planet's ubiquitous swamps are filled with aquatic life that thrive in the intensely acidic environment. That's because the plants draw energy from the geothermal heat that flows through these swamps, using this as an energy source rather than the light of the system star. Small predatory animals are common throughout these bogs, but they represent far less of a threat than the atmosphere itself. In the millennia since the Great Crusade, the few million humans who have dwelt on the planet have done so in small communities, typically less than 100 people. Through the ages, these humans have adapted to their toxic environment. They can tolerate the highly sulfuric atmosphere, and their diet is actually better than those of the outside world. Their vision has also adapted to the haze, though not so well that they are considered mutants. Nearly all the planet's populations are the offsprings of those criminals who managed to survive the brutal conditions. Largely seen as filth by the other Imperial planets, the natives have not responded well to any type of crusade or an effort to reunite their planet with the Imperium of Man. Some of the Crusade's officers argue that as descendant of prisoners, these inhabitants could scarcely qualify for membership into the Imperium. Of course, as a penal world, they were not due any support from the Imperium either. This meant that reasserting compliance after once more designating Xi'an as a penal world was an easy feat. The Orpheus salient had already begun the process of raising penal legions from the system's hardy population. These descendants of Imperial outcasts have so far cooperated reluctantly, but they have little recourse. As units of the Departamental Munitorum have begun to spend time on the planet to train the First Regiment, they have come across a number of worrisome legends. It seems that there are many tales of aggressive Xenos that lurk in the hottest and murkiest parts of the swamp. While there is no evidence to confirm this, there are always disappearances. And because of the environment, it has made tracking anything completely impossible, which has led to numerous unexplained disappearances amongst natives and the soldiers of the Crusade. Even establishing stable outposts on the murky surface has been met with challenges by the Imperial units. And that is the lore to the penal world. Now I'm going to return to this topic because it's one of those topics that can be expanded upon. This entire lore piece gave me an idea for a really cool D&D campaign set in the Warhammer 40K universe through a penal world. So I'll probably cover it in a video in the future. For the hobby portion of this video, though, I was going to continue to build on the terrain board or the trench board that I'm building. Check out our 40 facts on the Steel Legion if you guys want to get the part 1 to it, but I'm going to turn you guys around really quick and you're going to see my office. It's pretty trash. Like, there's just stuff all over the place, and I thought this would be a really good opportunity to, number one, just get my stuff together and clean everything, but number two, kind of share with you guys that throughout all the projects that I've completed, the thing that always holds me back is the fact that the area in which I'm working is like messy. If it's messy, I'm probably not going to want to do anything, even if it's just something as simple as painting. If I don't have my paints set in a certain spot, clean, ready, I usually tend to just brush it off and I'll say, oh, I'll paint them after I clean and stuff like that. So it's really important to have some type of schedule where you are constantly cleaning after the projects that you complete. And I don't know if you guys saw, but there's still like some bits and pieces from like different projects that I even filmed in the past couple 40 facts videos. So today I was thinking of doing like a montage of me cleaning the room, but I think that's kind of lame. So I'm going to leave that alone, and I'm just going to spend my time cleaning today, and then tomorrow's hobby video, hopefully, or 40 facts video, the hobby portion is going to include some type of build on the actual trench board. But what I do want to do is I want to move over to the Q&A section and answer the questions and the comments that you guys left off in the 40 facts and lore on the Steel Legion. So let's get into that. The first comment that I want to talk about comes from Emperor's Champion. Technically, the Steel Legion would beat the Death Corps. I don't think that's true. If you look at the Steel Legion and you look at the Death Corps of Krieg, whenever you have two factions or two Imperial Guard factions, usually the one that wins based on attrition is going to come out on top. And the Death Corps of Krieg is they are an attrition-based army. Their foot soldiers are the deadly ones. Whereas with the Steel Legion, if you guys listen through that video, you'll know that they are an armored military force. So they have a lot of tanks, basically. And tanks require fuel. They require replacement every time a war is fought, whereas the Death Corps of Krieg, it's gotten to the point where they are just biologically creating these vat babies, and they're sending them out as soldiers. So in my opinion, between the Steel Legion versus the Death Corps of Krieg, I would give it to the Death Corps of Krieg, but if you disagree with me, comment down below, let me know why. The next question comes from, let's see, Sapper12B. In the Steel Legion video, you talked about the Chaos Space Marine leaving for really long times, or living for a really long time because they accepted chaos. And in answer to one of my questions, you gave me an example of how a Marine did not accept chaos, wouldn't be around for 10,000 years unless it was in a dreadnought. But what about the Dark Angels, particularly those in the inner circle? I didn't click until hearing your answer. I didn't click until hearing your answer to this person's question, but I have read lore everywhere where the members of the inner circle are hunting down members of the fallen, and they remember them back before they fell. So there are obviously some Space Marines over 10,000 years that are interned in the dreadnoughts, that are not interned in the dreadnoughts. So the average life expectancy of a Space Marine that is not corrupted by chaos is about 300 years, and that's average life expectancy. That doesn't mean that if a Space Marine does absolutely nothing, he will die at 300, or of old age will get him at 300. That's not what that means. What that means is because of the nature of a Space Marine, he will more than likely die at 300. His actual age I think Dante is probably the oldest living Space Marine, and how old is Dante? I'll Google it right now. But the point is that once you get blessed by chaos, you basically get immortality. If there are members within the inner circle that have lived longer, and you have found that within the lore, number one, I would love to hear what portion of the codex you got that from, or what story you got that from. But more than likely it is because that is not your average everyday Space Marine that does what a regular Space Marine would do, which is fight for the Emperor. Their mission is to hunt the fallen, which I guess I would see them kind of like the Death Watch, where yes, their job is dangerous, but that doesn't mean that they're gonna see as much war as your average battle brother. Now let's see, Dante's age. Let's see what comes up. Yeah, so Dante is 1,500 standard years old, and that's old for a Space Marine. 1,500, nowhere near 10,000. So if there are members within the inner circle who have lived over 10,000, and you see it in the codex, it could be multiple reasons. Number one, like I said, they don't operate the same way as other battle brothers do, and their mission might just be to psychically probe for the fallen. Also, I don't think this is what you mean, but if you mean to say that the fallen have lived for 10,000 years, Well, yeah, obviously, because they went into the Eye of Terror, or they could have gone into the warp. They could have been empowered by chaos. So their life is going to be stretched out because they've gone into the reality and time bending universe that is the warp, separate from the real world. Which brings me to my second point, or the second possibility that a fallen, or not a fallen, but one of the inner circle can live for 10,000 years. Maybe they're searching within the Eye of Terror, and the Eye of Terror has warped their existence in the material world, kind of like Lysander. You should check out our 40 facts on Lysander is kind of old and kind of shitty, but basically this happened to Lysander. He went into he went into the warp, got stuck there, had a couple missions, came back out, and then it turned out that like his entire time in the warp, which was like a couple of years, or like I think it was like maybe a century, turned into something way more, to the point where now Lysander was the oldest living Imperial fist of that era. Because he was lost in the warp. To him, it was a normal time, but because of the time warping effects of the warp, that's what happened. So that could be an answer. And I hope that that makes sense, because if I remember, Sapper 12B, weren't you trying to create a Space Marine chapter? Actually, I can't remember now. I vaguely remember that you're trying to create your own lore, so hopefully my answer helps you build your own lore. If not, just ask again and I'll try to clarify. But I like this. I like these types of questions because we get to play around with what exists in 40K, and then you build off of that, or you homebrew off of that. And I really like that. I think that's the whole point of the channel. So, cool. Good question. Next question comes from Matt. Can you still do a Steel Legion army if Armageddon is destroyed in the lore? Keep up the good work. I remember playing with my friend on homemade felt tables and using books, DVDs, and CD cases. Yes, I remember those days as well. I have a good friend, and we used to play on his grandma's rug. He used to play salamanders, and I used to play orcs. And yeah, we would be on the floor playing 40K. It was a lot of fun. Now, as far as like having a Steel Legion if Armageddon is gone, yeah, because it's the same situation as the Cadian Guard. Cadia has fallen, but the Guard hasn't. The Guard is still around, and we even got new Guard models. Also, like, remember that it doesn't matter what regiment. If you have a regiment of the Imperial Guard, once they are, what is it called? Once they actually go out into a military campaign, they can be in a different part of the galaxy, and they might never see their homeworld again. So you could have the remnants of the Armageddon Steel Legion, the remnants of the Cadian Guard, the remnants of the Vostrayan Firstborn, and you could even play with the concept, like if you really want to get into like homebrewing lore and homebrewing special characters, you can get into some type of like situation where this regiment that you are fighting with, that's part of your warband, believes that their homeworld is destroyed, and then like through the process they find out like, no, there's still a chance for you guys to save that planet if you destroy this next enemy, and then that just gives you like more drive when you're playing a game, instead of just playing a game where it's like you versus your friend or you versus your enemy. If you paint the narrative of like, no, my regiment is fighting for the life of Armageddon, then all of a sudden it becomes more fun. So yeah, thanks for that question though. Next question comes from Jamie Briggins. Are you going to add like the battle debris and whatnot to your board? Yes, I'm going to add a bunch of debris. I'm going to use Mod Podge. No, what's it called? Sculptamold. I'm going to use Sculptamold to really add texture to the board. You guys will see it next time I do a tutorial for that board. It's going to look really cool. I also got a lot of really awesome comments complimenting me on the board. I'm really excited about it just because it's modular too. So I'm going to be able to like make different configurations, and it's going to be fun playing with my friends and everything. So hopefully I get that done What day is it? Today is the 14th this month. Hopefully I get it done this month. Next question comes from DJ Sharky. Due to the nature of perpetuals, would the effect secretly be caused by Nurgle, making like Vulcan and the Emperor influenced by him? No, probably not. Just because Nurgle, his whole thing is like entropy, slowly dying, slowly decaying. Vulcan was never really slowly decaying. He was a perpetual. He came back to life. I could see it in the Emperor because the Emperor has been on the Golden Throne slowly deteriorating. But when it comes to Vulcan, like, he was never deteriorating. So I don't think that the perpetual effect is the same as the entropy effect of Nurgle and Nurgle's blessings. But yeah. Let's see what else. This will be the last question. It comes from the big one. Do you think Jennifer Lopez eats tacos and burritos and then gives Ben Affleck taco-flavored kisses? Yeah, probably. It sounds about right. Is she with Ben Affleck, though? I thought she was with some other dude. Wasn't she with, like, a baseball player? Or, like, a salsa singer? I don't know. Those were the questions for today, and that was the lore for today. Thank you guys so much for listening. These Q&A portions might get a little bit longer with the more questions that you guys put out, but that's fine. It's awesome to interact with you guys and hopefully help you guys on your homebrew lore. With that said, I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. This was Gersh1 with One Mind Syndicate signing out.